Well, good morning, everyone. So thank you very much, Judy, for those kind words. I really appreciate it. And Jill and Laurel, I loved what you had to say about all the things. And tomorrow being Women's Entrepreneur Day, I think we do need to celebrate it. So it's quite an honor to be here. I apologize. I am getting laryngitis. I have sick kids at home and everything. So occasionally I'm going to use this water that's delicately placed here. When it falls off, okay, you know what? It's going to happen. But I know that we have about 20 or 25 minutes. We're going to have some formal comments. As they said, I'll tell you a little bit about starting Sleep Country and some of the lessons learned along the way. And then we get to talk about it, and then we'll have a Q&A, and then you get to ask me the questions you really wanted me to address, which will be great fun, so that I can't wait for that. But I know the first question that most people always ask me is, why mattresses? And no, it wasn't because I wanted to be the mattress queen since I was 7 years old. But you know, I started the business with two partners, Gord Lowndes and Steve Gunn, and they had done the management buyout of Simmons Canada from Simmons US, which is a manufacturer. And through that due diligence, we'd come to understand that the industry actually was very attractive. And just quickly, you know, it does have a recurring source of demand. You replace your mattress every 8 to 10 years. When I was introducing Oprah, I was suggesting that she might tell the world, because she's very iconic and influential, that maybe every 2 years, but she hasn't bid on that yet. But there also is some long-term growth fueled by some long-term demographics, particularly 20 years ago, the aging baby boom, the trend to bigger homes, cocooning in your bedrooms, the vacation properties, cottages, chalets, and cabins. And then there's this positive shift in mix where people are choosing now to trade up and purchase more expensive or much more luxurious and quality beds because of the increased awareness of the importance of health and sleep in that role of health. And by the way, as we looked at this industry, the mattress industry isn't, you know, typical retail. It's not fashion. It's not impulsive. You know, it's a very needs-based purchase. And when someone walks through the door to buy a mattress, they're generally in the market today. People don't browse in mattress stores. If they do, they need a life. I mean, proud as I am of our stores. You know, they're not that exciting unless you're in the market. So there was certainly some great fundamentals to the industry that attracted us to the industry. And then when we looked at the retail landscape that was existing 20 years ago, we really didn't think that the existing retailers were really doing a very good job in terms of servicing the market. Consider 50% of the market share was held by a handful of stores. Sears was the #1, Bay, Eaton's, the Brick, Leon's. And if you think about their concepts, they really don't lend themselves, I think, to a high service level, high selection level that we thought this category demanded, and even that the customer wanted. The other 50% was highly fragmented among a whole host of regional players, some small mom and pops, some furniture stores that also sold mattresses. But at the end of the day, they tended, and not everyone, but they tended to be very hard sell, very pushy, and very commoditized to the approach. So as we looked at this industry 20 years ago, we thought, you know, there was an opportunity to design a company that was going to address the customer's needs before, during, and after the sale. And we thought, you know, if we executed it properly, just might change the way mattresses are sold. So that was the plan, and it did work. So the question is, that's why we did it? Let me tell you a little bit quickly about how we did it. How did we gain the dominance we did? And to be honest, we don't try to do a lot. We focus on 3 things: top-of-mind awareness, providing an exceptional in-store experience, and providing an exceptional home delivery experience. And keeping our approach simple and us focusing on those 3 things has actually been the key to our success. And I think it's interesting if we look at, you know, the idea of distilling a concept down to the key fundamentals and then focusing on those factors that can set you apart. Take our advertising, and I won't talk a long time about it, and certainly in our Q&A we can talk more. But consider, if you will, for a moment, is that I don't know when you're in the market for a mattress because it's an infrequent purchase. You know, when you wake up in that morning and you've got a stiff back, or is there a life cycle change? You know, are you moving out of the house for your first time for your job? Are you having a child? Do you get married? All of these things might create a need for a mattress, but I don't know that. And I don't know when to really market to you. So in fact, we really wanted to make us top of mind. We wanted the world, or at least in the markets in which we operate, for them to know Sleep Country's name, so that when you found that you needed it, you knew about Sleep Country. You knew we sold mattresses and pillows. And you know, I think 20 years ago in our category, we took a very unconventional approach to our marketplace and marketing, because in our category, even though there were some big department stores, they never used electronic. And we were going to go into the marketplace and use exclusively electronic, radio and TV. It's very repetitive. It's very intrusive. I know, because my mom kept saying, enough already with the ads, Chris. We get the picture. You sell mattresses. You know, my business partner says it's like brainwashing. You cannot get away from me on the dial. But it's worked. You know, today we've added print and social media, and I think it might be an interesting, you know, from an entrepreneurial or a business perspective to understand the impact of that. And certainly it has evolved and has changed a little bit on how we go to market. But we certainly do maintain heavy weights, and we're trying to make sure that you hear Sleep Country's name. And we talk not only about the value proposition, because each of us knows we need to make sure that we have value. We're a great place, great prices, but we also have messages about our branding promises. Our sleep experts, our selection, our price guarantee. The work, Laurel, you mentioned community, the work we do in our community and our charity, which is very vital. And you know, it helps differentiate us from the competition. In addition, 20 years ago, we also chose to personify the company by having me, the president, also be the spokesperson. And I think the reason we did that, and again, that was very unconventional, but I think it's way more credible when someone from the company stands up and talks about the services, you know, and it makes us not a faceless corporation or just a jingle. Uh-oh, swallowed an ice cube. That'll be a problem. But it really felt good on my throat, so good. By the way, we know that as we advertise and we raise the bar of the expectations of the customer, we also raise the risk that if we don't deliver, we've actually created a larger disappointment. And so that was very vital, which is why we focused on the other two things, our in-store and home delivery. And just quickly, in-store, infrequent, big ticket, hard to compare. We think it's one of the few retail categories where customers really would like great sales assistance in helping make this choice. And so that's one of the things we've really focused on. We strive to provide a friendly, helpful, you know, consultative approach, and we really spend a lot of time training our sleep experts. We have a wide selection. We've introduced pillows because it's part of your sleep system, but also we have product that's at every price point, but also every comfort, so that we can really, really service the entire marketplace. And then we offer that price guarantee and the comfort guarantee to eliminate the concerns of buying the wrong mattress, perhaps, the one that isn't perfect for you, or paying too much. So again, very much designed to address every customer need. And then our third focus, which is our home delivery. So consider that if you're in a store and you're not having a great experience, you can leave. But when we deliver to your home, you're captive. And we don't just walk into your living room and plug in a TV. We walk into your bedroom. It's a very personal space. And so we understood this from the beginning. So one of the things we wanted to do is make sure that it was an exceptional experience from the beginning. Our team are uniformed, so we look very professional. We give you a 3-hour window so you can plan the rest of the day. You know, we set up your bed. We take away the packaging materials. We'll take away your old mattress and donate it to charity or recycle it 100%. And we wear those blue booties in order that when we protect your house, because it says to our customer, we care. You know, I think what happened was no one was paying any attention to this sort of aspect of every area in the business. And, you know, we aren't just trying to earn your business. We're trying to develop a relationship for life. And 20 years ago, because of the infrequent purchase cycle of a mattress, I don't think a lot of retailers thought about this as a relationship. So that's why we were interested in this industry. That's how we thought we became, or what we did to become dominant, but how we really did, and that's all about execution, and that's all about your right team. You know, people often equate advertising with branding, but in my experience in the last 20 years, branding is more about execution. It's kind of living up to those promises that we talk about in that advertising. And so, you know, branding to me is execution. It is all about having the right team. It's about attracting them, training them, and keeping them. We like to say that we hire attitude and we train for ability. So let's switch gears for a moment. I just thought I'd tell you a little bit also about my journey. And I'm often asked how difficult it was to go from the corporate world of working in banking for 13 years, commercial corporate and M&A, to starting my own company. And I think the same fundamentals that made me successful in the corporate world make me successful and helped me build the success at Sleep Country, and namely building competencies, commitment, perseverance, and integrity. And I know all of you in this room have heard that from various people, or you live it and you talk about it all the time when you speak. But here's my spin on it. So building competencies. You know, there is no substitution to being able to get the job done, and each of us usually isn't born with the skill sets that we need in order to do our jobs today. They're learned, and leadership can be learned as well. It's developed. It's part of the process. And you know, I think we really owe it to ourselves, and I tell my daughters this, that they owe it to themselves to learn as much about every experience they have, every decision they make, every choice every door they step through, learn as much as you can. You know, over the past 32 years, I've come to realize there is not one single path or ever a straight line to a single destination. You know, and each path develops a unique set of skills and experiences, failures and successes that make us who we are today. And so if you take, for instance, when I went off to biz school, I went off to be a doctor, a journalist, or a business person. And I took sciences, and then I switched out of that and went into business. I graduated from there. I spent 13 years in the commercial and corporate lending world of the banking industry, as well as doing some M&A. And then I started Sleep Country with my business partner. Whereas Steve, he was an engineer as an undergrad. He went to the same school, Western, for his MBA. He was a McKinsey consultant. He had his little Kenrick Capital, which was his little M&A business, which they had actually done the management buyout of Simmons Canada from Simmons US, which gave that kernel of idea and hope to us. And today we're business partners. We're equal partners. Our offices are right beside each other. And if you'd asked us 25 years ago, would we be selling mattresses today, we would have said no. That wasn't really what we were thinking we were doing. Different paths, each of us, and they're all very important for us to pursue. Commitment. Okay, I know all of us talk about it, and you know, we've all heard about it, but nothing really would have prepared me to the amount of time and effort it took when I started Sleep Country. I literally fell off the face of the earth. It was 24/7. I moved out west at the end of July, August 1994. We opened our first 4 stores October 29th, 1994. Opened 12 stores that year in the greater in BC area. Half a year later, we opened 10 stores in Toronto, growing it to 19 that following year, 17 the following year, and we now have over 200 stores across the country. And you know, what was very interesting was when I came to realize and understand that personal revelation of how willingly and wantingly I gave of my time. And that effort that my business partners and I showed elicited a similar commitment from our growing team. But by the way, I didn't have children when I started Sleep Country Canada. And I don't know if I would have accepted Steve and Gord's invitation to start Sleep Country if I'd had. I just can't honestly answer the question. I certainly couldn't have worked the hours I did had I had the children I did in the first 3 years. But I can tell you that I knew I still wanted to have children. And I still planned to have children. I was 34, turning 35, so I knew I had to have them sooner than later, regardless of the business that I was running. And on August 24th, 1997, I had my first of 2 girls. And I have to say, it was no small feat to walk into the office of my partners to say, hey, by the way, guys, I'm pregnant. And to their credit, they were very happy for me. But funny enough, in retrospect, as I thought about the previous 3 years, and particularly during our startup phase, and we'd had a board because we had some financial investors, and I sat around this boardroom and we were talking about, positioning and branding the company around me, the woman in the business, as the senior partners, because that was our target market initially. And there was lots of dialogue about, branding, the risk of branding around one person. What if I left? What if I was really no good, other than just no good? What if I were to die? It was very interesting to sit around a boardroom and have people talk about your mortality. What was even funnier is everyone got kind of comfortable with the fact that I might die. Seriously, because I think they thought that might create some advertising and maybe sympathy votes. So I have to tell you, now when there's a slow day in the stores, I check under my car before I leave the parking lot. But starting Sleep Country and knowing that I was still planning to have a family is exactly what Sheryl Sandberg talks about in her book, Lean In. I could have talked myself out of not accepting that amazing opportunity, stepping through that door, because I didn't know how I was going to handle having a family and running a business. And I think at the end of the day, I just thought I would cross that bridge when I came to it. if I came to it, if I was so blessed. And I was that, either it was that naive optimism, but it's exactly what I needed in order to have that perseverance and make it happen. So I wanted to talk about perseverance, that courage to go the distance, depending on what life throws at you. And I know all of us in this room, we understand that there are going to be failures and issues and obstacles and adversity, but how we deal with it, I think that's truly what defines us. I recently watched a TED Talk by Nyad. Has anyone seen it? She's the woman who swam from Cuba to Florida coast, the Gulf Stream, at the age of 64. Now, she's not the first person at 64 to do it. She's the first person ever, and this wasn't her first time. And if you're ever looking for a little motivation, by the way, she tried it in her late 20s. She tried it at 60. There's a TED Talk of her at 60 trying it and failing, which she almost actually died. And there were so many people that said, you can't do it, don't do it. It's not, you're not going to be able to do it. And I love when she says, if you have a dream, believe and find a way. And I don't think I can say it any better than that. I don't have too many regrets in my life. I certainly have my fair share of failures and issues and mistakes, and I'm very tough on myself, by the way. And I used to always stand up here and say, you need to understand and create the ability to forgive yourself for making that mistake. And then I thought that's very hypocritical because I'm the worst at it. But it's still an ideal objective, But at the end of the day, there aren't any major decisions I would actually change, because I realize that I wouldn't be who I am if I did, and I certainly wouldn't be standing in front of you if I had changed any of those decisions. I did want to talk quickly about integrity. I think all of us in this room understand the power and the importance of integrity as it relates to, those relationships with our key stakeholders. I'm taking this off so I'm not to go too long. And and I think those relationships and that integrity really build those relationships very well, like, with your vendors, with your customers, with your team. And I do think, it really is impossible to do it by yourself or alone, and certainly without longevity, without integrity, authenticity and honesty, because you might be able to fool some of the folks for a little while, but I don't think forever, and it will have an impact. As I look back on my career and on my life, it really is those relationships, personal and in business, that are my support systems that have helped me be successful. I grew up in a very loving family. I'm very lucky. I know that's not always the case, by the way. And they really did give me the belief that I could be anything I wanted to be. My parents both worked, by the way, when I was little. I would come from a very middle-class family. And they were very passionate about their jobs and their careers. And they shared their stories of their day every night at the dinner table. But what was very important to my sister, my brother, and I is that we knew that we were the most important things in their lives. And it's very fundamental to who I am today. And I have a 17-year-old and I have a 14-year-old. And I want to give my girls that same gift. At the end of the day, I need them, and they should know that they are way more important than my career or my business. I've also been very lucky, and we talked about this morning, about I have a great life partner. And I think in business, for women and entrepreneurs, it's very important for your support system. In my case, my husband has always been there. We'll be married 30 years this February. We dated 9 years before that. I know what you're thinking. It's impossible, I look so young. Or, I have a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old, what were you doing? Well, we were practicing, but besides that. But you know what? My husband is the person I always go to. He always builds me up when I'm down. He takes my side if there's some adversity that I'm going through, unless we're fighting, by the way. Then he doesn't. But he is my biggest cheerleader, my confidant, and my best friend, and I'm very lucky for that. And it's something that has helped my success. I also have a great business partner. He's not my personal partner, Steve Gunn. And it's funny because as I think about this is our 20th anniversary this year. It's very exciting for us. And I don't think when Steve and I first started our business 20 years ago that we understood how close we would become, how important that relationship is. It's hard when you start as partners to really know. It's very critical, though, to have a great business partner. And we are great friends. We're very good colleagues. We share the same vision and passion for our company. And then I have the privilege and honor of working with a tremendous team that make me look good every day, and that's also been very critical. So I have found that my support system, both at work and at home, have helped me persevere and be successful. And I believe, by the way, at the end of the day, the successes that I've had have been made that much more brighter because they're shared with the people and the colleagues that have helped me get there. I wanted to touch briefly, if I still have some time, on seizing the opportunity, the courage and the confidence to test your abilities, to go after your dream. You know, I did want to start my own business once I had been in the banking industry. I wanted to be on the other side of that desk and be the operator. And today, you know, I kind of look like a genius now because I started Sleep Country Canada, but at the time, to a lot of my family, friends, and colleagues, they thought I was crazy. They really did. Because, you know, at the time I was the most senior woman in commercial lending in Ontario, and I was being fast-tracked for vice president. And to many, it might have seemed like I was throwing it all away, you know, a very secure, well-paying job to go sell mattresses. And when I told my girlfriend what I was going to do, she laughed at me because she thought I was absolutely kidding. So, you know, how did I get comfortable with the risk? Well, first, I stopped telling anybody what I was going to do. I really did, because I thought, I'm just going to go do it, because I'm going to hear a lot of reasons why I shouldn't do it. So now I'm just going to, you know, forge ahead. And certainly, you know, we did do our due diligence. We raised our capital. We developed our business approach. We analyzed and planned. You have to do that. Nothing happens by chance. It happens after hard work and analytics. You have to know your competition. And then you do have to be a little bit lucky, and timing has to be good, but it's a combination of everything. But ultimately, by the way, for my husband and I to decide to quit our jobs, to sell everything we own and move out to Vancouver here and start Sleep Country with my business partners, we really had to weigh the issue of success versus failure. And certainly as we looked at the opportunity, you know, the business acumen we would have received, the financial opportunity, and just that knowledge outweighed the risk of failure, that financial risk that certainly was there. And ultimately, if it didn't work, I think that, you know, I was comforted by the belief that I was infinitely employable, but more importantly, that now I would be that much better off. I would have that much more skills, understanding, and knowledge to start my next business. But also consider that I'd agreed to be the spokesperson. So, had the company failed, it would be a very public failure. And one of the things that helped me on that is that we were starting the company in Vancouver and no one knew me here. And I know that sounds trite, but it was very true, that anonymity initially, and those ads weren't going to play in front of my family or my friends or my colleagues in Toronto, did help. You know, I think we're often discouraged, you know, by others who don't understand our idea, our concept, our dream, those naysayers that share their opinion even when we don't want to hear them, because, you know, they say it can't be done. And when we started Sleep Country, you know, our approach was far from conventional. We not only looked at what the market was doing, but more importantly, what they weren't. And we did plan to be the #1 mattress retailer in the country. And I know that our competitors thought we would never last. And may I suggest, it may not be what you do, but how you do it that can set you apart. I did want to touch briefly on credibility, because I think it's so important. I've already talked about being and accepting the role of spokesperson at the age of 34. And I knew that credibility was going to be an issue. I cannot tell you how many times people would come up to me in the store, or my team would say, oh, Chris, you know, people keep asking, are you really the president? May I suggest, had I been a male, that question may not be asked as often. But, you know, I have to say that being the spokesperson was a very critical part to our advertising and our way of reaching out to the community. And I made certain decisions on how I wanted Sleep Country and myself to be portrayed in the press, as long as you know, to the degree that I could control it. So every time I got a chance for an interview and there was going to be a photo shoot, I always wanted them to take a picture in the store, because I wanted them to see the store and our product and our logo and whatever it was, right? But I also knew that some photographer would want to get that fun photo, right, for the purpose of the paper. And he would always, or she would always ask me to sprawl on the mattress, and I never would. And my husband would say, oh, you just have no sense of humor. But you know what, at the end of the day, for me, this was about building trust and credibility. And I needed to be taken seriously, and I needed my company to be taken seriously. And I didn't need any, you know, opportunistic photographer, not to say you would be, or, you know, to have the risk of impacting that brand image. And it reminds me of the importance, by the way, of managing our own personal brands in business and in life, particularly with the social media. And I talk to my girls about this all the time. It does so affect our success, our opportunities, and how we are perceived. And you don't often get a second chance at it. Secondly, I wanted to share that issue and the importance of leveraging best practices. When we first started Sleep Country Canada, we were introduced to a little company called Sleep Country USA, and you guys here see those ads a lot, and for the last 20 years, because they came out of Bellingham and they were in Portland and Seattle, Washington. And we went down there and really looked at their model after we'd already established ours, because they had been so successful. They had built 30% of the market share within a very short space of time. And you know, it was very important for us because we learned a lot from that company. We borrowed their, we purchased their ERP system based on the success that they had. We hired the fellow that did their ads because we thought they were good. We purchased the rights to their trademark and their jingle. And those booties that our delivery team wear, that wasn't my idea. That was theirs. And you know what? It's so important, and I say it proudly because, you know, those operating processes, borrowed ideas, helped us establish ourselves far faster than had we done it ourselves. And it reduced the risk of failure from the beginning. And certainly we've improved on it. And today we continue to leverage best practices. We look inside our industry, outside our industry. We also ask our team all the time, folks that have been with us for a long time, and certainly folks we've just added in who've lived in other industries, how do we make us better? And I think leveraging best practices is a very key to success. Finally, in closing of my formal comments, and then we get to ask and we get to talk about a bunch of other questions in Q&A, which I love to do. But, you know, I want to suggest that it's important to plan to dream. And I know you think I'm going to try to sell you a mattress, but I've been trying to do that for the last 20 minutes. I kid. Just kidding. But over the years, you know, I would always talk that we are only limited by our own aspirations and expectations. It's how I deal with the issue of the glass ceiling. I do not want to give anyone the ability to control my life. And I want to make sure that whatever adversity that I have, it only is the opportunity to make me stronger and better, because now I know I really want that. And at the end of the day, we need to dream and dream big, even if that dream is only in passing. And I still believe this, but earlier in the year, the WPO, it's a women's president's organization, I'm a part of the chapter, we were asked to engage in this exercise, and in which we were asked to write down our dream or dreams, and we were asked a blue sky of what we still wanted to do. And, you know, to many of you in the room, this might be an exercise that you do on a pretty regular basis, but this was the first time I'd actually written down, you know, my personal goals. I've done business plans, strategic plans, to-do lists all the time. But not this honestly embracing this concept of what do I want to do with the rest of my life, which is a really interesting thing. And then thinking about, you know, those bucket lists of how to prioritize them and how do I make it happen. And you know, two things happened. One, I realized I have to live to 150 to get all my dreams accomplished. But certainly by announcing them and sharing them, because I had to share them with the other women at this chapter, and prioritizing and considering a plan, you know, finding the way, as Diane Nyad said, just might change the way I live the next 50 years of my life. And every time I come to this part, and I think about it last night as I thought about what I would share with you, I thought, okay, I reset that bucket list again. It's really important for us because you can get distracted, right? Just doing the day-to-day. But it's important. There is a discipline that comes with planning. And as you go about your careers and our lives, I really think assessing and writing down our core values, our skills, our strengths, our weaknesses, and then prioritizing the next steps will truly help you. I was sharing this process with a young woman I mentor from the WXN, Women's Executive Network. And we are through our formal process, but we continue to meet. And so this was last May we were chatting. I'm getting together with her in 2 weeks. And her name's Allison Hartnell. She's a brilliant young woman with 2 kids, and she's ambitious. And she's doing a fabulous job in her marketing roles that she's dealing with. But at the end of our little dialogue and our little bucket list planning, she was going off to perform as a singer in her spare time because that was also one of her goals. And I said I wanted to go rent a villa in the south of France, which just this summer I did, so I could check that one off. So we need to have the conviction to pursue our dreams and the courage to know that whatever we achieve in pursuit of that goal, success is knowing that we tried. So those are my formal comments. And Q&A.
How do you define work-life balance? What does that mean to you?
I don't have it. It's elusive at best. And I do get asked this a lot. And so, and I do speak to it often. You know, at the end of the day, I don't think, you know, it's a very difficult thing to have. But I think perspective and living in the moment, you know, everyone's life balance is different. I think it really is dependent on all the balls you have in the air. And I think you also have to accept that you either willingly have those all there. And if not, you need to kind of fix that process and reduce them. There isn't a day that doesn't go by, and we talked about this morning, where certainly as we built the business, even today, that I don't feel like I'm getting everything done, that I'm not, you know, I'm not always having, I'm not being the best mom, or I'm not being, you know, the best business partner, I'm not spending enough time in the office, or, you know, it's just the litany of things that we get to do. And then our partners, my husband's very good because he calls me on my poop and he says, okay, Chris, like, you know, take it, why do you have to do everything here? Why can't you just, you know, eliminate certain things? So at the end of the day, I think there is a myth related to it, but I think it's a choice we have to come to understand, that we either decide we want to try to do it all, and there are going to be ebbs and flows. There are going to be great days where we think we've got capes and we're flying and we can do it all. And then there are days where we figure that, you know what, we need to manage our life a little bit different, and it's getting that perspective again. I have to say my children give me perspective, right? And they teach you a lot about holding on to that balance. When they were young and I used to come home and I'd leave the office with this full briefcase and I was pretending that I was going to work at all time, and I'd come in the front door and I'd be worried about all the things I didn't and all the challenges that we had. And they'd hear the door open, they'd come running into my arms and they'd jump up and they'd love me regardless of what I accomplished or didn't accomplish. That's when I realized that that's the perspective I need to have. That, you know, we have to stop being so tough on ourselves, and I'm pretty tough on myself, but we can only do what we can do. And then we need to figure out, how do we work with our colleagues? How do we start to allocate some of the responsibilities? Because until I had my first daughter at the company, I was wearing way too many hats, and I had lots of members of my team ready and willing and able to take on more responsibility, and I hadn't yet given them the chance. And because I had to at least go have the child and spend a little time at home, and I was back relatively soon, but they so were ready, and they're better at their job, at doing that job, than I was, because that's their focus and that's their ability. So I think part of the process of balance is, you know, finding those support systems, delegating some of those roles, understanding that balance is not something that we have all the time. It's great, and keeping in the moment so we can appreciate what we've accomplished helps us look forward and kind of motivates you. Because if you always say, I still have to do this, you don't necessarily reflect backwards to understand what you've accomplished. And in accomplishing it or thinking about that for a moment, you kind of live in the moment to go, okay, now I'm excited, I can now move forward because this is what I've got done. I've done something. Does that make sense?
That's fantastic.
So I'd like to build on some of the discussion we had before we started, which was about the fact that women business owners sometimes tend to have businesses which are smaller than their male counterparts, and we talked about this at the BC Economic Forum as well. And the credit conditions survey came out, and Mr. Canada surveys how much business owners have borrowed. And so in 2013, male business owners borrowed $350,000 on average. Female business owners borrowed $60,000. So the discussion before breakfast, or before your talk, was around the fact that you had male partners, or male partner. Did that influence your vision for your business, and do you think it influences? Do you think it's something that you recommend?
So in our conversation this morning, one of the things that we were talking about is, and there seems to be some research to say that women might set lower expectations or aspirations initially because of the risk associated with it. And I shared that one of the things that I find, and in dialoguing occasionally with women entrepreneurs or just observing, is that I've been very lucky to have two great partners, and I spoke a little bit about it. One, my personal partner, who absolutely supported my role and said, you are good, go do it. whatever we lose, we've gained in knowledge and experience. We can, lose everything we have. It didn't matter. And that was very important because I don't think that's always the case. He's also very comfortable in his own skin. So it never bothered him that his wife was successful or that she worked with 2 male partners. I'm not certain that's always the case. And so I think that for certain, it helps us. It just wasn't a barrier. And the actual business plan was either to go big or go home. We had to go and be a dominant in each of our markets. We had through their and my context, but more so absolutely Gord and Steve's, the access to some capital on a personal, because we were a startup in retail. We weren't a conventional, no bank was going to give us money at all. It was just, are you kidding? You've had no experience in retail, you're 2 consultants and a banker. But because we'd had a variety of relationships, but it was still a risk, right? And so I do think that there's an opportunity. I do think that occasionally, it's more systemic on just how men and women's relationships are, right? And so I've been very fortunate that I've had a great husband that supported me, that was never, ever feeling like he wasn't successful because I was. And that doesn't have to be a man-woman issue, but it certainly is very important that your support system supports you regardless of your or their success. And so I do think that finding great business partners is important. I do think occasionally finding male business partners can be very important, because if in fact culturally, we're a little bit more of a risk taker, yet we have all the ability. Having a partner that pushes us, that has the confidence in us to put us in that role, to partner with it, it could be very effective when you both move forward, because you are adding other supplementary and complementary skills. So I think it can. I don't know if it's the only solution, but I think it can be one of them.
Hi, I'm Claire. I really enjoyed your talk. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about some of the insights that you got from your consumers or your customers along the way. Any kind of ahas that sort of woke you up to customer needs or pain points that allowed you to market to your customers a little deeper or change your strategy?
So it's a great question. And, I have to say, when we started 20 years ago, we really were trying to, and we did a lot of focus groups, and we shopped the competition, and we asked our family and friends and colleagues anecdotally, what did they find when they went and bought a mattress? Because now we've actually, we increased to pillows and because of our sleep system. But so we really wanted to understand that. And so, we did approach it as a in-store and a home delivery and an aftercare service. We did some focus groups that we hadn't actually even thought about financing, by the way, prior to opening, and then we realized some people kept saying, well, what about financing? So that was an interesting idea. There's a few things, and life's changing now too, by the way, from a marketing perspective. When we started 20 years ago, we were electronic. The web didn't exist. So it was easier for us to have a very push strategy. And most businesses could do that, business to retail, to consumer. But now customers pull, and we need to be relevant on how they pull the information, so we're one of their choices. But 20 years ago, one of the things that I found interesting was the concept and the power of just being local, like being made in Canada, being a Canadian company. Although we wanted to make sure we were established that, because we were Canadian managed, Canadian owned, Canadian product, it still surprised us, by the way, when it reacted, when customers were excited to be buying Canadian. So I think that's very important, and it did help us, and we do tout that as being a very important part of who we are and what we do. It was interesting from the aspect of the work in the community. And I think it's very relevant for all of us, and you talked about this too, is that, when we deliver a mattress, we take away your old mattress, we donate it to charity, we recycle. And we started to talk to a variety of agencies that we worked with as well, and work with doing some ads with them in order that we could share their knowledge and collaborate with them and advocate what they were doing. And I think that was very important too, because it was funny to me that I was surprised a bit at how often I came to organizations or speaking, and people would come up and it really resonated with them. So again, from a consumer perspective, that mattered. So Made in Canada mattered. Product matters, right, in terms of that. So the dialogue about what was important to them as it relates to it. So we're very careful. We talk a lot in our store level, in our team level, of facilitating what's happening in the marketplace. What are we missing? And I think today the biggest challenge and opportunity would be, how do we advertise our product? How do we, operate within a social media world that changes my effectiveness on an electronic strategy, because I can't reach everyone. My daughters never watch conventional radio and TV, and they are going to be the future, business and area that I need to focus on. So we need to be relevant, and how are we relevant? And I think there's a whole host of things, the products we carry, the convenience. We do have that. E-commerce, will be something that we'll need to pay attention to. We actually, we're a very bricks and mortar. We believe this is a very tactile purchase. It's very important because it's infrequent to have you come into our store. But at some point, there are individuals who will never want to walk into a door because they are used to and want to just do it online. So we're listening, and we need to figure out a way and evolve in order that we're relevant. So we're very in tune. Does that answer your question? Mm-hmm.
What has been the actual financial impact in terms of revenues, do you think, as you shifted the business further to the social media strategy away from just the radio and television?
Yeah, I think in our industry, by the way, there are certain retailers that sell online, but not that many yet. It hasn't made the inroads of other industries at this point, because I think many of us would agree it's a big ticket, it's infrequent, and it's hard to compare. And so it usually is something that someone says, no, it's an important part of what I do. It's a third of your life. It's the one piece of furniture you use every day in your house. And it's important to my health, my, immune system, all those other issues. So people still generally, I think, are walking through the doors. There's not as much business that's being done on the net in our category. And I sit and chat in this realm, and on our web we explain why these are our products, this is why, but come in. We want to help you because it's a very personal thing. Even between husband and wife, their likes and dislikes of a mattress could be very different. So you need to find something that blends so that it's right for them. My comfort is very different than yours. So at this point, it's a way for us to explain that. It's a way to us to be relevant, to say this is why you need to think about it. This is why mattresses are so important. It's why your pillow is so important. There are some products, though, that I think are different, like the accessory items, which are easier to compare, headboards and linens and mattress pads, and we will figure out that, and I think that's a great opportunity. At this point, it's not as big. I don't think it has impacted it negatively, and I really look at it as an exciting opportunity for us going forward.
What I was curious about is you talk about having great business partners and really good support structure. Especially in the early years, did you ever have like a mentor or someone who was either from that industry so that you kind of gain the knowledge and over the years still work with? I get that question all the time, and I didn't have a formal mentor. Like, I know there's a lot more mentoring now, and I'm a mentor, but oh, thank you. It's my, I don't know, my sore throat, I apologize. But what I do say to this answer, because there are absolutely individuals that I've worked with that have been very influential in my life. Sometimes, by the way, I think all of us, we've learned as much from people who are really good at what they've done. They've been good bosses, they've been good, influencers. And sometimes you also learn, for those that you've worked with, that you would not ever want to emulate. How did they make you feel when you needed their support? And so sometimes I would look at, in my life, in my experience at 13 years in the banking industry, which, by the way, can be a very interesting environment. It tends to be a little bit paranoid. It can be very silo, where you do not share your best practices because you might make someone else look better. And that's just not the bank. It's whatever competitive environment. And I think that when I met certain bosses and colleagues,
where we were very open and we were collaborative, I understood the power of working as a team. There's one example. I did work for a great vice president, and we were, as a group, being disbanded. We were just being reallocated to the bank and all that stuff, in various reasons, for a number of reasons. But I remember the moment that we knew something was going on, but he came into this, we had this boardroom, we were all called into the boardroom, right? Okay, the shoe's gonna drop, all this stuff. He brought a box of Kleenex in, right? And I'm like 28, right? And women aren't supposed to cry at the office, right? So you never do. You never show your emotion, you're really tough. At least that's what we're supposed to be. Although that wasn't so good at the 20th anniversary when I was talking to my team and I started to cry. I was a little embarrassed, but they knew I loved them. And but at the time it was funny because he was very emotional about having to explain to his team, ourselves, that we were all going to be taken care of, but loved working with us, and that we were all had great potential and all that other stuff. And he'd come into my office and said, you've got a good future. But the fact that he was very emotional. And we were all very stunned. We were also very emotional because it was tough, right? Because there's a bit of fear, there's unknown. But I have to say that him showing that emotion resonated with me when I was a young person in corporate lending and soon to be having my bigger team, because I felt better. I felt like someone cared about me, where lots of times you don't, right? And when you're forging, when I started Sleep Country, I was very much wanting to create a culture that wasn't going to have the office politics that are so rampant, that can cause a whole bunch of energy to be wasted in protecting your turf than working together to make something greater. And when I was promoted at the bank, and I got promoted among my colleagues who I know thought they should get my job, and I sat in the boardroom and I looked at my colleagues that I'd worked with for years. I said, look, at the end of the day, each of us is really great at what we do. That's why we're here. But when we can work together as a team, we're going to be fantastic. And so it kind of started my process. It was very influential on the culture I wanted to build, and the dialogue and the collaboration that I think is very important, and making people feel that they are important. I don't use the word employees. They're my colleagues, they're my team. I work for them as much as they work for us. Our senior team, our C-suite everybody calls, are called the CSG. It's corny, it's called the Central Support Group, because we're there to support our team, because all the action really of our business is at the store level with our customer. That's where the next leaders are coming from. So that's the philosophy. And I have to say that I think that my vice president at that time instilled in me the importance of feeling that someone really cared. And you still have to create accountability. I was asked, business isn't family, but there is an opportunity for people to feel like they're important and to recognize them, reward them, and that's important. But there is still an objective, because we need to be profitable so that we're here for longevity. In my family's case, if they don't pass, I don't fire them. But there is that process. But I think those are the things that I would say. And I do have great.
So what I wanted to find out is, you talked about that first phase that was like a sacrificial stage, right? Where you're just putting everything into your business. So my question is, at what point, when you went from 4 stores and you started growing even bigger, was it hard for you to go into it? Or maybe because you had a partner, did it help? Because I find that inside I feel it's time to grow. But there is something that just scares you. There is something that keeps nagging me going, am I going to go all over again and start that sacrificing stage again?
Oh, yeah.
Or do I just say, this is my goal, this is my vision, and I'm going for it?
Yep. Well, it's a great question. So in the first year, and again, we had to build 12 stores just because of our model, right? It's just about advertising. You blanket the city, you build the critical mass, you create a distribution center. Our stores are showrooms. So then, you have to get to some point that it's actually at least break even before you bet the farm and go to the next city, that was part of our process, right? So it was very much to go in, create that critical mass, and then go to the next one. I have to say that at one phase where we were opening another 17 stores, so it was taking it to 33 stores in Ontario, we were opening Calgary. But Steve and I were not able to be in those. We were doing enough in Ontario. We now had to rely on our team from the West to actually open Calgary. And we were worried, right? Because we had touched every other aspect, right? We'd always been a part of the whole hiring process. And in the fall, when we went out to Calgary, and the stores were open, or going to be open, the trucks were deckled and all that stuff, and we looked at each other and went, wow, these guys did a great job. And so I think the challenge is, occasionally, is that as you scale up, you have to figure out how to do that without jeopardizing the core. At the end of the day, for us, being big wasn't always better, but being profitable as we grew was more important. And so at the end of the first 3 years, and we built 50 stores, and at 2000, I honestly said, look, we have to slow it down. We needed to create infrastructure. We needed to create policies and processes because we needed to be able to replicate it at the same time. And we were, the first 3 years, it was tense because it was, 24/7, and we hadn't created enough structure occasionally. So we had to slow it down because at the end of the day, again, we're trying to be profitable because that's a sustainability factor. So, the way we had to do that was, how do we expand? We had to expand after we'd reached a critical mass, after we'd at least broke even in one region to move to the other. And then we would take key individuals and that were in our operations and our sales team and the leadership roles and move them, transfer them, as long as we could have people in behind. Our growth wasn't limited by capital. It was by bench strength in our team, our leadership group. So we had to grow that in order that we could move some key people and had the other ones in behind. So, at the end of the day, you can't do it all again and again in every market. Because if you're the critical person and you leave and you don't have people in behind to fill your place, you're leaving a gap and a hole. So you need to, I don't know your business, but for us, our ability to grow has been to create our infrastructure of our team and create our leadership. And at the beginning, it was hard. When I left BC and came to Toronto, it was like, oh, Christine's gone. It was very tough on them, apparently. And then they got a better manager, but so I think that's what I would say is that, it is tough. If you ask me today whether I'd want to start another business and work 24/7 the way I did, I don't know. I guess it depends on the business because you know how much it took. But at the end of the day, having done what you've done, you probably now have other ways, not shortcuts, but you've been there, so you now know what you need to put in place faster, sooner. Who are the management team you can move? Is there someone else that you can work with that can help take on some of those responsibilities? Succession, at least in our company, is very critical, right? It's finding those individuals who can really manage the team. Because for us, it's all connecting. It's all about the quality of the execution, right? And at the end of the day, if it was so top heavy, and the care and feeding of our team has really been our success, and our execution and what we do, how we do it. But it's the who, it's the team that's allowed us. Does that make sense in terms of that?
What would you define in 20 years as your biggest success and your biggest challenge?
Oh gosh, I should know these questions because I get them, but I change all the time. So I would say the biggest success would be, if you're talking in relationship to business. Oh, well, my biggest success has to be, I was going to say my marriage, but that'd be funny. It would be my kids to be, I am privileged to have two wonderful girls at the same time of, being able to have had a career. From a business perspective, though, I have to say, having a company that's grown in 20 years, and I have a team of people that I'm also privileged to work with, because I'm very proud of the culture that we have. And we don't always get it right, by the way. I know that occasionally there are times where we could be better, but I think we really have a unique thing within our company and the culture that we've developed. and we've had, you know, the number of customers that we've actually helped. I would say that. But it has to be, you know, I stood here and said the most important thing in my lives is my girls, and it's got to be. I would give Sleep Country up to have had the great joy of having been a mom and them. At the end of the day, though, the only ones that could say whether I was a good mom are them. And I have to share one quick story, is that one of the ads came on our TV, on our radio in our kitchen, and my youngest was probably 6 years old, and my oldest was 9 at the time, and we're standing there, and we're listening to a commercial, and my youngest goes, "Mommy, that doesn't sound like you on the radio. You sound so nice." So, it might be my greatest accomplishment, but they may not think that in that regard. But I think challenge, I think the challenge is that perspective of balance. So, you know, at the end of the day, there's been lots of challenges from a business perspective. I think evolving the social media and e-commerce has got to be our great opportunity, but certainly every retailer has to think about bricks and mortar and e-commerce. I think it's going to be a factor. And I think we're well positioned to do that. But I think from my perspective, and you are all entrepreneurs in varying stages in business and careers, is taking that moment to reflect and to enjoy what you're doing right now. And as you reflect, it really is a really interesting aspect, because you kind of think of of what you've learned, because I'm surprised sometimes. I go, oh, okay, yeah, I do know more than I thought. But it also sets the stage of what you can share among each other and also move forward. And so I would say that to not take myself so seriously has been a big challenge. To live in the moment, even though I tell my girlfriends, live in the moment, enjoy your life, but you know, to do it myself. And to just relax a bit and say, it's okay. I think those are the good challenges in life.